Welcome back. This is Press Review on Morning Express, and with me the guests who started with us, Gloria Roba, Youth Policy Analyst, as well as Bashir Hussein Bashir, who is, have I baptized you? Suleiman Bashir, who is an advocate. Okay, so let's get into it and talk about what's making headlines, or continue on with what's making headlines. And I'll start off with on a lighter note. On the front page of the Business Daily this morning, you don't have the copies, but this is something that I'm sure you do know about. A heroic welcome to the national basketball team. The Morans captain Eric Mutoro has been pictured there. They're having roses. They did the country proud, made history. After almost 3 decades of not doing much that deserves recognition, they actually made it and won that in the Afro Basket qualifiers, led by a female coach. What do you make of that, Gloria?
It's exciting. It's exciting to see that we are making strides not only as runners, but in different categories of sports. And
yes,
I think maybe what we really need to look into is how the team got there.
Yes.
There is a lot of, behind the scenes resources that were spent, sponsors and things like that. But yeah, it's exciting, and I'm actually looking out to see what the ministry is going to do now that we have Zach Kinuthia in as the CAS of sports. So yeah, it's exciting times.
It's exciting times and worth celebrating. Bashir, what do you make of this one?
It is a very elating moment to have the sportsmen and women making the country proud. And I think the only issue is that whenever we get them back home, we really appreciate them. They are normally faced with a serious tax cut by the taxman who is normally waiting for them.
Yes.
I think this is the time that we really need to look at things positive and appreciate these good gentlemen.
Yes.
And my congratulations to them. Okay.
And you can find that story as well on the sports section of the Standard newspaper, as well as the Daily Nation. Find out more about what their prospects are as we move on. But let's get back into politics. And according to the Daily Nation this morning, we're told about the plan by the allies of the Deputy President not to, and his camp in general, not to have a no campaign against the referendum. They actually are planning, according to that article, to go ahead and if the Deputy President becomes president, then they're going to change the constitution and rectify what they do not like. This is what the paper is asserting. Gloria is laughing about that. Why does this tickle you?
I'm laughing because, human beings, we respond to what we see.
Okay.
So if you realize that all it takes is for you to be in power, for you to change our constitution, then why would you spend so much resources trying to fight those who are in power? So I think I'm laughing because it's a very dangerous way to go, because that means every time we have a change in guard, someone is going to actually go in and say, oh, let me kind of see if I can pass this through an amendment, or if I can do this through, a referendum, because now I'm in power. So, it's going to be like a never-ending cycle of changing the constitution for whoever who's sitting in there. And I think that is the fundamental basis of why Linda Katiba is coming in to say that we must protect the constitution.
Yes.
But I think they have a point. Deputy President's allies have a point, because we are looking at 16 months into elections.
Yes.
Why would you want to spend your resources, your energy and your focus on getting involved in a contest, in a match that is not in your control, that is not yours?
But then if you're talking about resources, then even if they're going to go on the other side of where we are having the Deputy President as president and then start trying to change the constitution, won't that require resources as well? One would argue that why don't you ride this wave and try and counter it and have people not vote for?
When I'm talking about resources, not necessarily money. Remember, to run any kind of campaign, yes or no, you're going to need a lot of human capital.
Indeed.
So that means you have to sit down all your elected leaders, all your aspiring leaders, all your, the circles that you have, convince them into why we are saying no, and then have them go out in masses to lead this campaign. Now, when you look at just that element of the human resources, right now, how many counties have passed it in terms of the county assembly? 40, over 40, yeah? So if you go, for instance, to a county like where I come from in Kisii, some of the members of Tanga Tanga truly believe that they want to pass the Building Bridges initiative.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily just about money. It's like, okay, for now, the interest of the people might be seeming like it's split between, 50-50. Half of them want to go yes, half of them want to go no. Now you ask yourself as a person, as a presidential candidate who's actually trying to win an election in 16 months, are you going to spend time, energy, and resources in fighting your opponent's battle? Or are you going to sit back? Because that's his initiative. It's Raila Odinga's initiative. It's his interest to change that constitution. He knows best why he wants to bring 650 MPs. Why would you want to start meddling with his own campaign agenda? So I think what you're seeing William Ruto doing is, he's saying, let me focus. I came in to talk about the hustlers. I came in to, awaken the spirit of the hustlers and inform them that come 2022, this is where we want to be. And I'm not trying to be digressed by other people.
Okay. Yeah. The article says his allies have also advised him to save his money for the 2022 presidential campaign and to back candidates who give him leverage in both the National Assembly and the Senate. Bashir, when you see this story, we are also having a comment here that actually is what Gloria said. Bomet Senator Christopher Langatu says it's not wise for the deputy president to face his boss. In fact, he told him to avoid at all costs any action which might be interpreted as confrontational. What do you make of this, Bashir?
You see, Trix, the first thing, any promoter of an amendment to this constitution, whenever this constitution is amended, the amendment will affect you, myself, and every Kenyan.
Yes.
It should be countered in the event it is not in your opinion, if you do not like it. I think the place of the deputy president, with respect to countering the promoters of that bill, he has every right to do so. It is because in the event the amendment sails through, it will affect him, his children, myself, and everybody else.
Yes.
So every person has an obligation to give his or her own view of an amendment bill. That's very important. Now, when you look at who are the players with respect to this amendment, we have the promoters of the bill on one side. On the other side, we have some individuals who adopt the Linda Katiba, whatever.
Yes.
These are individuals who cannot even influence me to reconsider my decision with respect to supporting the bill.
Yes.
So I think one of the very cardinal people who may make a decision or who may make a determination as to who may support or who may not is with respect to who can influence the masses. And at this stage, there are three people who can do so. One is the president, the other one is the former premier. These now are on one side. Who remains? It is the president, deputy president. So I think he has a very important stake with respect to amending this constitution. So let us not say that the former premier, this is his amendment, he wants to amend the constitution, so what? I can counter it, any person can counter it. So I think let us encourage any other person who may want to counter that narrative. And I think this kind of prediction with respect to whether or not the deputy president is going to maybe support the bill, in my view, it is too early to do such a prediction. I think it is coming up as a result of the passage that has occurred on the floors of the county assemblies. The most important stage lies within Article 257, Sub-Article 10. It lies with the people, and the deputy president commands a huge following. He can go to the masses, influence them to either support it or not support it. But I think now the kind of discussions that we're having right now emanates from what has happened on the floors of the county assembly, and that is just one step amongst many steps that we expect.
Okay, and as we talk about those steps, they have mentioned that there's a possibility that because they are not going to have a no campaign and fight this, if the deputy president becomes president, then they just change the constitution and remove the things that they don't like.
You see, Trix,
yeah.
The amendments are affecting Article 255. You cannot avoid a referendum, and any referendum will still be costly. That's the fact.
Yes.
So the IEBC will call for a budget. You give IEBC the budget. Whether or not there are those who are for the no campaign or not, the money will still be expended in carrying out this procedure.
Indeed.
Yes.
And far from that, Gloria, I think something you'd like to add.
I wanted to say, I mean, it's unfair to say that the drivers of the Linda Katiba initiative cannot influence
But to be
anyone,
honest, Gloria,
I think what they're suffering from is lack of resources. So because we have very educated and influential people there. I mean, when you speak of a lady like Jerotich Sei, you cannot say that is not a person who can influence anyone. We have Martha Karua in there. We have a lot. I mean, let's also give some level of respect.
Let's be honest. We're talking about clout, and you know what that means in this country. If you
let me ask you, how do you get clout? How do you get clout? A lot of resources are spent to get clouds. You know, you cannot compare the initiative, the BBI Yes campaign with Linda Katiba. BBI is government funded. It's funded by taxpayers' money. When they're just even going to Bomas of Kenya to unveil a book, how much is spent on media, how much is spent on, you know, even just the pomp and flair. And then you look at Linda Katiba, they're struggling. They're struggling even to call for a press conference.
Indeed,
you know?
they are. Indeed, they are struggling. Let's move on from that one. There's a story that attempts to explain how Uhuru outwitted Ruto in Central. Now, one would imagine that it would just be because this is his backyard. But then there's some assertions here in this article that I would like us to look at. Bashir, they're talking about the fact that there were threats by the executive, but some ward representatives like Kiruga, Thuku, Nyeri's Chinga MCA, and Elias Mugera, Meru Municipality, who voted no, cited threats by the executive. Some of the executives were there to watch how each MCA would vote. It was meant to intimidate the MCAs. What do you make about this allegation?
In fact, even in my own backyard, that's Garissa County,
yes,
we have had some of the members of the county assembly who are of the view that it is the speaker who has bulldozed the passage of the bill on the members. I think these are issues that are now coming up, but one thing we can see as Kenyans is this bill has been hugely adopted by members of the county assemblies, a majority of the county assemblies. So that is for a fact. Whatever incentives that were dangled to these members is a different story altogether. Yeah. But the bill has gone through the assemblies and it has passed. I think going forward, every member of a county assembly who had voted no has another obligation to now influence his people or his constituents now, those who are members of his ward, to go against the bill, to vote against the bill. That is now the price of democracy that we need to appreciate.
Yes.
These issues of saying that at this stage members were threatened or this and this, that will end up polarizing an already bad situation in our country.
Okay, Gloria?
Yeah, but it is a fact. You know, to say that we shouldn't talk about how the bill was passed is actually not the process of passing something. Also must be transparent, fair, and within our guidelines. So the same way that we still have issues about how we impeached our governor of Nairobi, because remember, we were questioning the process, you know, was it legitimate, was it transparent, you know. So to say that let's not talk about the threats and the intimidation, for me it's like saying, however way we get things done, it is done, and so therefore, you know, we move forward.
But then what would that do to the outcome?
You know, when I was analyzing this whole situation,
yes,
I said, sometimes it actually pays to be an independent elected leader, because these elected leaders are dealing with party politics,
yes,
they are dealing with being threatened, most of them because they have been engaging in corrupt activities. So somebody somewhere has got a dossier on them. Okay. So you know, when it reaches a time like a time where you're needed to act independently for the people, you are unable because there's so many constraints around you.
Okay, Bashir wants to interject on that one.
No, I really agree with her. I think, Trix, the question we ask ourselves is, if any bill that has been passed through a county assembly, what can a member who is not comfortable, who is not happy, or who feels threatened, what can he do?
What can they do?
They can do what the members of the Baringo County Assembly did. There was a petition that was lodged before the High Court yesterday, and the court directed that the resolution should not be forwarded to the speakers for now. So you see now the court has the platform of addressing any grievance that a member that may have any members of the county assembly. I think that is the route we need to go.
But you know, you're talking about members of county assemblies.
Yes.
Yeah? I don't know how it is in Garissa, but I have met a couple of MCAs, and the talk that my co-panelist is having about, you know, you can go and you can appeal and you can do this. Most of these MCAs are barely literate.
They are not empowered.
They're barely literate.
Okay.
So, you know, and even those who you're seeing are taking the proper steps, like he's talking about, actually, it is not them in person. It is, you know, there is a behind the scenes.
There's a force behind
it.
Yeah.
So I think at the end of the day, I was going to say, come 2022,
yes,
Kenyans should also stop voting on party lines, because these political parties are actually harming us more than they're building us. Most of the decisions that are being made by elected leaders in parliament or in these houses, they are being made because of the party forces. So if you have a lot of independent candidates and we throw away these parties that do not have any ideologies, at the end of the day, if I'm independent and I'm not corrupt, I'm definitely not going to be forced into passing a bill like the Building Bridges Initiative.
Yeah, and the article also speaks critics to the full throttle campaign, and they point to the Sagata meeting. There was only one message: the BBI was the surest way to ensure the interest of Mount Kenya, even after the president's second and final term ends are secured. Do you think that had Bashir much effect to how to the outcome of this of the bill?
You see, Trix, I think in the coming days, in the event we now, let's say, proceed with a referendum, or in the event we go ahead and have a referendum, the kind of an issue that we are going to be faced with is a country that will suffer lots of economic issues. So I think what we right now should look at is, what can we do not to be dissuaded or swayed of focusing on developing the country, especially on the part of the presidency, while still exercising their right under the Constitution. I think that is the kind of a balance. For me, for the president to be kind of involved or meddle himself in so much politics at this stage, should not be the key thing. Right now, it should be about delivery, whilst at the same time maybe promoting a bill which is a right. So let the presidency try and have a balance of the two, and that is what will be in the interest of the people of Kenya.
Okay, and Gloria, what do you make of that, the Sagana meeting having this much effect?
You know, one of the reasons why Uhuru Kenyatta is so passionate about this Building Bridges initiative is because since the handshake, he has been unable to get the Big Four agenda moving. And that was supposed to be his legacy. And when he realized it's very difficult to actualize his legacy at that time, then he picked up a new legacy, just like a spoiled child. I don't like this, I like that. Now the new legacy being the Building Bridges initiative, which I actually commend him for taking up, because if it's about uniting Kenyans, yes, definitely, that would be a nice statement to, exit the stage with. And that's the reason why you're seeing him passionately involved in ensuring that it's being passed in the county assemblies, in actually, hands-on calling for those meetings in Sagana. Yesterday there was was it a video or a picture of him celebrating after the county assemblies passed it. So I think for him it's more about, when I exit, what am I going to leave behind?
Legacy.
If I can leave behind a united Kenya, and the vehicle to do that is BBI, then by all means, he's passionate about it.
Yeah, and the article also tries to look into that messaging, that the president was helpless and he was laid back, but then how the MCAs in Central voted proved it wrong. Do you believe that there's a problem with that messaging?
You see, Trix, in the event we go for, let's say, a referendum, and the people of Kenya vote a no, what legacy now will the president speak of? If this is the only legacy he might want to maybe talk about. This is not even a legacy. You are now mutilating the Constitution. Is that even a legacy? I think every person has a view over what is happening in the country. But I think, in my view, it should not be an excuse on his part for not fulfilling the so-called the Big Four agenda. But on the flip side, what we appreciate is the kind of developments that are ongoing in this country. We have the expressway that is just going opposite this side. There are a number of things that the president is doing. Whilst he may have a few things to talk about, let this not be the main. This is not even a legacy. This is a promotion. It is something any person might just want to wage for or push for. Every single Kenyan has his or her own view over this bill. In my view, this may not be a legacy. Let us focus on the Big Four so that he may not remain with any excuse once the term ends.
Gloria?
I think it's a fact that this is his legacy. And to take that away, I mean, it tricks.
But there are other things that the president has done.
Yes, but you know, a legacy is what people remember you for. Our former president, Mwai Kibaki, did a lot of things, but we remembered him for our roads. And you can talk about that as well as our former president Moi. He did a lot of things, but we remember him particularly, especially for the education sector.
Yes.
So it's not about a lot of things you're doing. You want to exit that stage with a bang. And I think BBI was actually a very good strategy for him to exit the stage but the problem is too many players got involved, and then he sort of at one point did not have control on what was actually being pushed. So I don't blame him for being so focused on passing BBI, and because also remember BBI introduces the element that he might not have to retire, So if I'm sitting there and I'm thinking that there's a chance that I have some sort of lifeline.
He might not have to retire. Explain this.
I mean, when we're talking about the expanded executive, and even the possibility of, for instance, the MPs at this point, they would be cabinet, they could actually be picked to the executive. But there was a caveat before, and I'm not quite sure whether it has been included in the bill, where with the new expanded executive, you could actually step down as a president and then go run for MP, and before you run for MP, then you can be brought in as a deputy prime minister, or you could be, appointed as something else. So if it offers you a lifeline in terms of your political career.
The president has been emphatic on the fact that he's not interested on moving on in that capacity after
and
the
I will tell
election.
you that also Raila Odinga has been emphatic about not running for presidency, right?
Has he though?
Well, he was, and they even conducted a whole, I call it a fundraiser, where they were saying if you want to run for president under ODM, then you have to come pay $1 million and apply. That to me was a fundraiser, because we all knew that eventually Raila Odinga was going to run. So I mean, these are politicians.
Okay, Bashir, I'd like your reaction to what she's saying.
I think any promise or any statement made by these politicians with respect to whether or not, again, they will run for another office is not a written rule.
Yeah.
These are issues that they might just breach here and there, but the fact remains, in the event the head of state, as my sister puts it, in the event such arguments that he will get another term or an extension of term in office, he's doomed. If that gets to the members of the public, that he will emerge as a self-centered person.
Leader.
But I think on his part, he has been quite clear to Kenyans that he has served his second term, and when the term ends, he will vacate office.
Indeed.
It is for other people who will appreciate the office and let the ball rolling.
Yeah. Now, let's move on to matters judiciary. The Daily Nation is having a series this week on the Maraga succession. Now, there are two opinion pieces with contrasting views on how Maraga fared during his tenure. We're having an opinion piece here by Aseko Owino, who says there were open chants that the constitution was too idealistic and conferred too much democracy. Maraga, according to this writer, refused to be bullied by the presidency and parliament. Now, Kenyans were used to an overbearing executive, is what it says, that lorded over the arms of government. This is on one side. On the other side, we have Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi, who says that the CJ was more of a politician as opposed to a leader of the judiciary, or head of the judiciary. The verdict led to an eruption and destroyed the relationship between the judiciary and the executive. But we all know where all this started. The statements about being a revisit that shall happen. To many were of the opinion that this is just a fallout because of how the election was handled by the highest court of the land. I'll start with you, Bashir, as an advocate. What do you make of these contrasting opinions?
I think as legal practitioners, let me just start with Mutunga, the former CJ.
Yes.
What we really remember him for is the infrastructural development that he has caused within the judiciary sector. On the part of Maraga, he did two things that are quite, I think, notable in my view. He equally focused more on the infrastructural growth of the judiciary as an arm.
Right.
He has equally made the judiciary independent. He has actually emphasized and re-emphasized on the concept of the independence of the judiciary as an arm of the government. So Maraga has emerged in a way that he had advocated for the judiciary, and he did not bow down to the influence that the executive and the parliament had wanted to exercise on the judiciary.
Yes.
So these are two things that we remember him for.
And this is a plus.
In the year 2003, Maraga, that is when he was appointed as High Court judge. When he was in Mombasa, and when he was in Eldoret, there are some rulings that he has made that even as legal practitioners that we still allude to. I think in my view, he has emerged as a very smart judge.
Okay.
But at this stage, now that he has vacated office, it causes no harm for any person to do an analysis of his term in office, whether or not he has done something good. I think the advantage of an analysis of his term in his office is the predecessor now will have an opportunity of actually evaluating what the successor will have an opportunity of evaluating what his predecessor has done. So I think that is how positive we need to look at. On the part of Ahmed Nasir and himself, there is a defamation suit that is now rife. I had seen the pleadings that were written down. It is really important that on the part of defamation, for you to win any defamatory suit, there are three things that you need to prove. Number one, you must make something that is not true about you. It has to be a false statement.
Yes.
So if I call you a thief, you really have to show me that you're not a thief.
Yeah. Oh.
The second thing is it should be made public. It should be made known to third persons. People should know of what I have said. So if I have made an allegation about you and people are not aware of, that is not a good element. And the most important one is it must cause you a damage. So those are the three things I think the Maraga's lawyers are trying to prove, that whatever Ahmed Nasir has tweeted, those are the three elements that it might contain. I think that's a court issue that the court will do a determination upon. But I think, in my view, what the former CJA, who has been a good Court of Appeal judge and a High Court judge since 2003, whatever he has done, every single Kenyan can see it for himself.
Okay. Gloria?
I'm glad that it is written that these are opinion pieces, because Ahmed Nazir's opinion is very biased, and it's very biased against the CJ. First of all, that he claims that Maraga was a politician, more of a politician than he was a CJ. I think that's a very wrong statement, because a person who actually could sit there and annul a whole election, a presidential election, that is a person who's practicing political obscurity. So at the end of the day, when you look at the actions or the activities with which Maraga actually, how he carried out his duties, he's been very, very, very impartial towards either side of political divide. He's the person who actually decided, like it is rightfully written, he refused to be bullied by the executive.
Indeed.
There is a part where Ahmed Nazir says that CJ Maraga had a chance to make a lot of changes in the judiciary, but then he did not take those opportunities, and he wasted the opportunities by being a politician. But I think the challenges that we see the judiciary facing are not necessarily because of the lack of inaction from Maraga, but it's because they have not been empowered. The judiciary has not been empowered, and I'm talking about resources. We saw how they were struggling in terms of, they were understaffed. They are understaffed. Not only that, when every time it's time to pass the budget in terms of the things that are needed, people are talking about why don't we have convictions for corruptions, because we don't have enough resources to be able to carry out a case vigorously to the point that we have convictions. So I think Maraga actually practiced political obscurity, and he managed, and that's why we're having a problem feeling in that position. He managed to stand his ground.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Gloria Roba is a youth policy analyst. Suleiman Bashir is an advocate. I don't know why I keep thinking of the name Hussein this morning. But thank you so much for your analysis. We're going to take a short break. On the other side, more stories and as well and analysis here on Morning Express. Stay tuned.